Is Miracleman worth it? I don't think so. I don't think so anymore. When it comes to Miracleman, I think my love ends and begins with the Alan Moore stuff. Issue 16 of Miracleman, and that's it. Because Neil Gaiman, God bless him, literary, always greatest comics writer ever, I've heard people say. That's your opinion. You can have it. That's fine. His work doesn't really do much for me. Sandman isn't even the best Sandman comic to come out in the past 40 years that would belong to Sandman Mystery Theater. The stories, some of them are great. Some of them are mediocre at best, in my opinion. But for the most part, 30 some odd years for Miracle Man comics, I don't really think it's worth it. I don't really think the wait is worth it. Because at the end, you're basically just trying to retread the narrative that Alan Moore wove with a wide swath of artists in varying quality. I know I'll be the first to admit the Chuck Austin, as he was known at the time, Chuck Beckham work is the weakest out of that Alan Moore Miracle Man run. John Todelman is far superior to everybody else. Gary Leach, God bless him, God rest his soul, but John Todelman just nailed it with the Olympus arc. And then you had Rick Veitch, you had Alan Davis, but this run, this story of this schlub, like realizing he's something greater and going on to remember who he is, and all the triumph and more trouble than there's triumph, and eventually coming to his realization that he's no longer human. He may have had human experiences, but he is no longer human. He basically buried in a way, his life. He made a stone cairn, and just basically that's a stack of stones. Like when they make sure predators don't get a body, even though there's no body under there, because he just says Komodo one more time, and his ragged, flabby, beaten body of his former, Mike Moran has been put in a stasis, or the warp smiths, and it's a kind of like the negative zone or whatever you want to call it, equivalent thereof. The name is escaping me right now, but is basically I'm never going to go back to that way of life again. That person is dead. But realizing the bittersweetness of it, his wife is gone. The world is radically changed, supposedly for the better. Improvement after such horrific things have happened. Reforming criminals, making the world a better place, but at what cost? Because at the end of the day, he doesn't have the glands in his head, doesn't have the senses that a normal human would have. He is superhuman, and the kind of who would mourn for this god, and he's lost. He's gained a lot, but he's lost so much more. He lost the innocence, lost perspective. That's the big thing. But the Neil Gaiman stuff, the especially the Golden Age, after rereading it and realizing this isn't as good as I remember. This isn't as good as some of even the mediocre bad stuff that Gaiman has written in the past. Which bad would be example that the Death of Batman, the 2 issue, I forgot the numbers, but it was a Batman and Detective. The 2 issues he did with I believe it was Andy Kubert, might have been Adam Kubert. The one where it's like, oh, Batman being reborn, and I was like, ugh. I kind of did hate that, but I'd rather read that than read the Neil Gaiman Miracle Man stuff. All that money Marvel threw Joe Quesada, the behest of Marvel threw to get Marvel Man, Miracle Man. How many variants? How many characters transform? The variants of Captain Marvel exist. We're talking the set one that says Shazam, because that's what Miracle Man is. How many do you need at Marvel? I mean, you already have Captain Marvel. Then you have the another Marvel. Then you have Captain Marvel, the first female, Monica Rambeau. Then you have Carol. Then you have all these other characters. Then you have Novar and Genisville, and then you have how many variants of Superman you have? You got Gladiator, you got Hyperion, you got Hyperion, the evil Hyperion, you got the Hyperion from Supreme Power, you got the Hyperion that from a future, and all. You have dozens of derivative characters that are inspired by other characters. This is not nothing interesting, nothing new. What can Miracle Man bring to these characters other than, hey, it's Miracle Man? What is he actually going to do? It's like bringing an indie wrestling star that's hot on the indie circuit, GCW or this, that, whatever, bringing him in and feeding him to like Brock Lesnar or somebody like that. It, it's pointless. Like, just because you're a big fish in a small pond does not mean you should be going into the ocean. Because bad things will happen. Or at the very least, if bad things don't happen, you're no longer special. You're no longer important. You're no longer interesting. And I think that's the biggest problem with Miracle Man. You start taking him out of his world. You start taking him out of that universe, that world that Alan Moore and all these amazing artists crafted. And I love the fact that Alan Moore won't let him use his name as, promotion. Because he's like, written by the original author. Because he's like, no, you would use my name to sell this garbage. Maybe not that garbage. Okay, overpriced. I'm not gonna say garbage, but they would slap his name around. They would, try to capitalize off that. So good for him. But the end of the day, it's not worth it. It's not worth. It's okay to let go of. You know what? My enjoyment of Miracle Man ends with Miracle Man number 16, and that's okay. But maybe you feel different. Maybe you've never read Miracle Man. Maybe you don't want to. I mean, hell, the hardcovers are $40 each or something insane like that. I guess to recoup the cost they spent buying up Miracle Man. And I know they did an omnibus, and most of that's going to be like text material, backup matter, variant covers, whatever it was. I'm at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know if it's worth it, but maybe. I mean, honestly, I do prefer Miracle Man over Watchmen, and I prefer Miracle Man over Swamp Thing because Swamp Thing it kind of meanders a bit. It's great, but it does meander. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's okay. I've got enough Miracle Man. I don't need no more. So, just my 2 cents. Thanks for listening, and have yourselves a good one.